teens. A group of people which I particularly know a lot about as I am a member of this group. We know some things about teens, but one of the things that we know about them is that this is the time where a lot of people get their first car. Others that live in very urban areas may not need a car because their college is right across the street, or they simply have no need for an automobile, or it's too difficult for them to learn. But usually, no matter how old you are, most people learn to drive at some point. Driving involves several things, and one of the things that is required is a car. A lot of people that don't drive don't own cars, so they need to buy a first car, a car that they're going to keep with them for a while. A first car is a strategic choice. It's about what you want out of a car, how much you're willing to pay, and, what features you're looking for. Everyone's first car needs are different, and I'm here to try and match a little bit of everyone, some for some people, some for other people, to try and match the tastes of the overall public for first cars. For example, my first car was a 2013 Toyota Prius, either 2013 or 2014, and I didn't really buy it as a lateral move, as a strategic choice. It just happened to be the Toyota Prius from the third generation that happened to be in sale at my dealership, at my local, Oregon used car dealership. And it's been a great car, and I love it, and I still own it, among a few others, which I'll talk about later. But it's time to talk about excellent first cars. And to start off, we're going to talk about the average category, like the average amount that someone's going to want to spend on a car. This is between $5,000 and maybe on the upper end $9,000 for a first car. So with that, let's get into it. The second generation Toyota Prius. This is a car that I think makes an excellent first car because it's just a great car. You've got excellent miles per gallon, you've got decent ground clearance, you're not really going to have to worry about it that much in the snow. Again, the gas mileage is fantastic. The interior, well, a little bit weird and awkward, isn't half bad, and also, hybrids wear differently than normal cars because the engine isn't running all the time. So when you see, 200,000 miles on a car like this, the engine hasn't really been running for a lot of those miles. And also, the battery degrades minimally over a few years, but even if you do need to get it replaced, it's not like when these cars came out when no one knew how to make the batteries and it was only Toyota. Now there are aftermarket kits, aftermarket places. I had my hybrid battery replaced. I just dropped it off and they just dealt with it. Like, I just dropped it off for like a day or two and I picked it up and it had a brand new hybrid battery and my gas mileage went up like 10 miles per gallon. And it's really not that easy. For me, it was only around $2,000. For these cars, it's probably around $1,500 to get a new battery. That's not labor. Labor was like $500, but it's still not much. And also, there's a lot of these cars with good hybrid batteries. These batteries were quoted to last, I think it was 200,000 miles or 10 years, whichever comes first. Now, these cars are usually more than 10 years old, but the batteries still usually are typically fantastic and fine in these cars. And a lot of people have already had them replaced, and they make excellent first cars, but there is something you have to watch out for. In 2006, Toyota made a crucial change to the Toyota Prius. In the 2005 and before in the 4 models, they had a painted dash material. It was essentially just plastic with paint over it, and this was bad because it chipped, it cracked, it aged horribly, it showed scratches, it wasn't great. Then in 2006, they moved to this textured material. It's like that usual blow molded, plastic leather type texture. This also reflected less, and it aged much better. Like, you couldn't see scratches, it didn't flake off. So I would definitely get a Prius that's either 2006 or newer from this generation. So that'd be 2006 to 2009. The prices range, but they're usually about $3,500 to $5,000, $6,000. I would usually get as high on the spectrum as you can go, because that usually means the battery's in better quality. Also, always look at things and test drive them before you buy them. This is a screenshot from Auto Tempest. Auto Tempest is really useful because you know how you go on like CarMax or Cars.com or any online purchasing, site? It's kind of hard to look between them and compare and contrast. Auto Tempest takes all of those results and compiles them together where you can still see the important stuff like the price tag, the condition in some cases, the miles, everything like that. But you still see the listings, there's still many there. So you get the best deals you can, and you can sort through them and filter them. It's the best way to buy a car online. So I would definitely use that. You don't really buy it through Auto Tempest unless they themselves list the vehicle, which they do temporarily or, occasionally. But it's a great tool. So here's a screenshot from that. And as you can see, these are real world examples because it's not just like, oh, well, the range is blah, 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 blah. These are actual listings. And, a range, again, from $3,500 to around $6,000. Next is the Toyota Sienna, specifically from around 2006 to 2010. These cars are fantastic, and people don't traditionally think of them as first cars, or at least cheap first cars, but the thing is, you get a lot of bang for your buck. These cars are usually priced similarly with Corollas, and for that you get a V6, and something up their sleeve, which I'll talk about later, but you get extra cargo room in the back. And also, this car isn't only useful for you. If you have a lot of friends, if you have a family that likes to vacation, they're going to be asking to borrow it all the time. You've got 3 rows, you've got plenty of the room in the back for moving out your friends or moving out yourself. You're never going to have a car where it's like, oh, it's too small, or, oh, I don't want to take it places. It's also ultra reliable. You get the reliability of a Camry with this big back just globbed onto it. And also, if you just want to drive it like a normal car, you can just do that too. You can drive it like a Camry and you won't really notice the size of the weight too much. Maybe parallel parking, but other than that, you don't really feel it as much as you would. Also, because it's a minivan and a Toyota product, the suspension is really great, very luxurious, very nice, and it keeps body roll down to a minimum. Also, for this 2005 one, you've got 2 variations. You've got the pre-facelifted model, and then the facelifted model. The pre-facelifted is on the left, and the facelifted is on the right. Not much difference. It was facelifted in about, 2005, but there's not a lot big difference in engine size or quality or anything like that. It's just which look do you prefer more, especially since they're older and they're about the same price now. But this van has a trick up its sleeve, and that's, at the time, this was the only minivan you could option with all-wheel drive. That's right, for the snow you can have an all-wheel drive minivan, a minivan that performs better in the snow than 99% of hatchbacks and sedans out there. Fantastic, although they are really rare on Auto Tempest on every single online car shopping site, because most of these are hiding away in local dealerships, or still being owned, because they are fantastic vehicles. On Auto Tempest, there's only about 12 results, which is very low for a mass-produced Toyota product like this, and if you get the all-wheel drive, it's about a $2,000 increase. If you don't, you can be looking at prices like $3,000 to $7,000. With all-wheel drive, it's more in the $7,000 to $8,000 range. Now this next car is basically what I would call a Toyota Yaris, but better. The Toyota Yaris is really appealing as a first car because at least the first generation and the Toyota Echo were really mechanical. They're really cheap. They've got manual transmissions, barely, some of them have air conditioning. Most of them don't, actually, which I find weird. This car is not like that at all. It's more refined. It's more big. You have more space in the back. You have more space in the boot. But it's still a very mechanical car, which makes it extremely appealing. Like, if you want a no-frills, no-nonsense car, like a Ford Tempest, like a Ford Tempo. This car is exactly like that, but for a modern audience. This one also came standard with all-wheel drive. There was a sedan and like a sport pack version, but I much prefer like the crossover version. This is, of course, the Suzuki SX4. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but I think, it makes a fantastic first car. Great gas mileage, comfortable ride, great space in the storage. There's only so much you can say. Great storage space. Now, the SX4 only had one generation, as Suzuki died in 2013, the car was introduced in 2006, so there's not a lot of variation there. Again, here's a screenshot of how I would personally look for it on Auto Tempest with the mileage and everything. I would go a little bit lower mileage with these, just not because the parts of the engines were unreliable. In fact, these are some of the most reliable engines on the world, but it's because parts are kind of hard to find. Suzuki doesn't exist in the United States anymore, so finding parts isn't really a hassle. It's more just expensive, so I wouldn't really, go for a super high mileage one of these, but even still, $66,000 for $8,000, these are pretty decently cheap, even with low mileage, so that's a nice plus about this one. The Toyota Avalon is great as a first car because it's so overlooked. A lot of people when they buy their first car, if they're buying a sedan, they'll buy like a Corolla or a Camry. And I never understood that because a lot of times they're buying severely used cars, that cars they're really used. And to that I say, well, if an Avalon, which is the higher tier Toyota sedan, and a Camry cost the same, why not get the Avalon? Well, why would you want the Avalon in the first place? It rides better. It has a more luxurious interior. It's nicer to drive. It has more cargo space. It has more leg room in the back. It has more leg room in the front. It has heated seats. A lot of the features that you'll have in modern day cars today. Even if you don't have a big budget for your first car, you don't want it to feel like you're slumming it, This car feels like a car that you buy because you want to own it, even if the budget isn't satisfactory. And a lot of times, people don't really care. And the Camry, is a nice car. It's perfectly reliable back in the day, and it still is today. But this car, which is just as reliable, but rides more comfortably and has more features that you want, if they're the same price, I say splurge and get the Avalon, But only buy the Toyota Avalons from like 2005 to 2010, because if you buy a 2011 or a 2012, you get this interior. Toyota was trying to make it modern. They were trying to like fit a screen in there. They were trying to use their modern architecture. And also, the radio compared to the screen ages worse, the same, if not worse than the radio does. So just get the radio, which you can replace. This custom screen is going to be a lot harder to find a replacement for. So that's the only really selling point. And this interior is just hideous. I just can't stand it. It's this big, round, gumpy block of crap, and it's plasticky, and they got rid of a lot of stuff, and they made the gauge cluster hideous and look like a spider. I just don't like it. Still, go with the original Avalon. You could get this one if there's one for sale. It doesn't really matter, but personally, I prefer the aesthetics of the other interior significantly to this one. I think, personally, again, not trying to offend anybody that owns this car, but this is probably one of the most ugly interiors Toyota has ever made for a car ever in history. And here they are, and the prices really aren't bad. I mean, these cars are affordable. It's not like you're splurging too much. Again, I would say for the price, they're really worth it. Now, there are some expensive ones, like the $15,000 ones, but that's only because they have low mileage. And remember, just because it's an Avalon doesn't mean it can't behave like a Camry. These will take mileage as well as a Camry would, so judge these the same you would judge a Camry. Don't really put mile restrictions on it, because they'll run just fine as long as you maintain them. I would say in the case of old Toyota products, what's more important is not the amount of miles that it has, but how well the person who owned it maintained it. That's key. Now, here's a first car that I personally love, and that's the Volkswagen Jetta Sportswagen from about 2012 to 2014. So, why do I love this car? Well, specifically, it's the TDI version, the diesel version. The diesel versions are great. They get great gas mileage, not as good as a regular Jetta, but again, extremely good gas mileage. And something that a lot of people don't think about for their first car is space. Just because it's your first car doesn't mean you're going to need it for things. That's when you're moving out. That's when you're moving into college. Again, some people get their first cars later in life, but usually when teens get their first cars, they have a lot of upcoming changes coming. Moving out of the house, moving into college, having friends where you need seats, and space is really valuable in your first car as long as it's reliable. And this is like the perfect compromise. You get perfect amounts of space, you compromise a little bit on the gas mileage, but because it's a turbo diesel, you really don't notice that much. It doesn't feel sluggish, it doesn't feel slow, and the interior is and I can't stress this enough, extremely luxurious. And also, again, when you're driving a wagon, and don't be afraid to, just embrace it. Embrace that you drive a wagon. A lot of people, when they see cars like this, they don't really think, they feel like it'll feel slow. It really doesn't. It feels just like a normal Jetta would when you drive it. But the thing is, when you're really going to be noticing the space is when you have your dog back there, is when you have big, heavy things back there, when you're moving and you can fit a washing machine in this thing. There's so much space in this car that you wouldn't get with a regular Jetta for, again, pretty much the same price used. So I would say, why not splurge and get the bigger, nicer vehicle? It's pretty much the same as a Jetta, in terms of legroom and everything else, but you have a bigger trunk and it's not a sedan. And I would say, you want to know what? That's pretty good. P.S. You can also get these from like 2014 to 2019, except they called it the Volkswagen Golf Sportswagen. Also, I just like the way this car looks, okay? So sue me. All right, well, here we go. Here's the listing. This is how I would put it into Auto Tempest, how you should put it into Auto Tempest, the recommended years and stuff. And then here's the list. Now, this list may seem a bit pricey, but look at them. They're all 2014. You can also get 2011s, 2012s, and 2013s, which are more expensive. Which are less expensive, so my bad on that part. But this car really does make a great first car. It handles well, it drives well, it's got plenty of space that you're going to appreciate when you're moving or doing anything. If you're a person who, like a tradesman or something, where you may need space in your everyday vehicle, even if you may have a work vehicle occasionally, just to move stuff about, this car is really useful for that. And again, you're really not going to notice the drive different than, I think I'm having serious problems. You're not really going to notice a difference in ride quality between the wagon and the sedan. So why not get the wagon, Anyway, yeah, that's moving on. Now we're moving on to the baller cars, the cars that are for the children with expensive first budgets. This is anywhere between like $7,000 to $8,000 to around $15,000, which I don't think people realize is a lot for a first car, especially nowadays. The Subaru Crosstrek or Subaru XV Crosstrek, the Subaru XV Crosstrek is between 2012 or 2013 and 2015, and then the XV Crosstrek started in 2016 and went all the way up until 2018. These cars are really good first cars. There was marginal updates between the XV and the regular Crosstrek. They changed the name in 2015. Just know that the XV came with a manual more often, but it came with a worse radio and worse interior quality. So if you want better interior quality and you don't mind losing the manual, in most cars they were still available with it, but it's very rare in the Crosstrek, then go with that. But if you just don't care and you just want a manual everyday beater with, okay-ish interior quality, go with the XV. These are great first cars for people that genuinely need all-wheel drive. Like in Oregon, we have a lot of snow. Well, at least we had a lot of snow. I live in Florida now. And I saw a lot of people driving around these XV Crosstreks, and boy, in my Prius, when winter came around, I was not driving that thing. I was driving the family SUV, because of course I was, because it was snowy, after our family smartened up and sold our minivan. But, These cars are great. They're like little mini go anywhere cars. Now, if you don't really need the all-wheel drive, I would say it's not worth paying the extra added price, even used, and I would just get the Impreza. But this is still a fantastic car for, people who need, cars that can handle diverse climates, and this is perfect for that, while still being decently affordable. Here are the specs, and you can see that most of them, this is the XV Crosstrek, are for sale around, $10,000 to $15,000. Perfectly the range, with most of them being around the $11,000, $12,000 mark, more than $15,000 for the 2016 and beyond. Again, these are great first cars. They're very, reliable. They're very durable. They do have a CVT, so if you want a manual, I would go with one of the previous cars on this list. And also, the exterior space with the seats not folded down isn't fantastic. It's actually worse than a regular Subaru Impreza hatchback, because of the sloping of the rear roof. So if you really want this car but more space, get the Subaru Impreza hatch. But other than that, this car is fantastic. It's more for people who really need all-wheel drive and ground clearance, because, this regular Impreza also has all-wheel drive. All right, now for the Toyota Camry, but the non-facelifted version, so from 2012 to 2015, 2014. These cars make excellent first cars because they're very versatile. You can have a base model L trim level, which is just your average run-of-the-mill car. You just need a car, you need to shift the transmission, it goes into drive, press the gas, and the car goes forward. You can have the XLE, which is, very luxurious, filled with leather and wood, the kibbles and bits and stuff, everything that you want. You can have the SEV6, which is performance and looks all in one package. You can have the regular SE, which is just performance. You can have a hybrid of all those aforementioned vehicles, which is really useful. Well, not the V6. And you get a great car anyways. Now, here's where kind of an issue arises with this particular vehicle, is with safety. This one in the front overlap crash test, which is where they overlap only a quarter of the front car, didn't do so hot. In fact, it did pretty poorly and received a poor rating from the IIHS, but unless you're planning on getting into a lot of corner accidents with your vehicle, I think you should be fine, since this issue affects plenty of other cars like the Prius V, and all those people have seemed to be, okay. It's also very rare that an accident like that happens, and it's not like you're completely dead. Like, there's still a car around you to protect you, just maybe not as well as some of the other crash tests. All right, well, here we have it. These are pretty affordable, but usually they linger around the $13,000, $14,000 mark, which is why they're in the luxury category. But it really all depends on trim level. This is the XLE. The Ls can usually go for under $9,000. These are really good vehicles. I mean, they're extremely reliable, and they don't have the issues that the previous generation Camry had. Also, people say that I don't reward the car industry enough for successes, and I would like to reward Toyota for coming up with some of the best colors I have ever seen. My favorite being the Sandy Beach Metallic. Give in to society, buy a tan Camry with a tan interior. Give in to society, buy a tan Camry with a tan interior. Okay, there's an HRV on this list. Now, I'm not a fantastic supporter of this car because they made this car entirely to be the first car. It is smaller than a CRV, it's cheaper than a CRV, but it still has all-wheel drive in some trim levels, and some people will still like it. Also, the touches aren't really expensive per se, but they look modern enough to fool young people. You want to know what? I'm not a huge fan of this car, but I will admit it makes a fantastic first car. These cars have been subject to depreciation, and you can get a 2015 for under $15,000 with all-wheel drive. That's not anything I can say about any other car out there, because everyone else knows this car as the generic first car, so you might as well take advantage of that. They're also not ugly either. They're extremely well put together. The interior fits very well, nicely, like how you'd expect a Honda to, and it's that good old Honda quality without being, an extremely, and I'm not saying this to degrade the vehicle, an extremely serious car, like the CHR, even though that thing is kind of weaving in and out of reality. Again, this car would not be on this list. It's not really remarkable. It doesn't really have great all-wheel drive system, doesn't really have great boot space, but for the price, at $20,000 for under $15,000, you really can't beat it. You couldn't beat it if you wanted to. They also updated the car in 2017 with different rims and wheels and stuff, and I would definitely get the 2015s and the 2016s, because I think this thing just looks kind of tchotchke-y, just weird. Anyway, yeah, moving on to the next car. Okay, never mind, I lied. I also had this photo, which I feel like is really needed to show you how much leg room, seat room, and height room there is, so I'm going to show this as well. I also couldn't, move on to the next car without talking about the dual, triple vents on the passenger side. I think it looks cool, but also the airflow must suck from all of those. The fourth generation Prius is kind of controversial because a lot of people thought that it was really ugly and that the interior was bad. The interior is bad. It's a big chunk of plastic on the steering wheel. Everything is plasticky, but it's high quality. This interior will last, and what's even better is the car is decently reliable. The car will last forever. You know, back when I was buying my first car, the newest Prius that I could get without exceeding my limit was the 3rd generation Prius, because this thing was still new and in production. Nowadays, because it's, you know, what people think is ugly, I actually have no issue with the way that this is. I actually have a paint sample color of this sitting on my desk. It was pretty expensive. Yeah, they're fine. This is the limit now. This is the nicest Prius you can get for your money without exceeding $15,000 nowadays, and I think that that's great. These make excellent first cars, and they're very, like, they don't really need maintenance as much as other cars are, so I appreciate that about this, you know, generation of Prius. Now, I'm leading you on with the price a little bit because these are the Tourings. The Tourings give you, like, heated seats and a big, gigantic touchscreen, which is bigger than the base one. All those are fine, so I'm leading you on with the price. They are cheaper than this. But this is how I'd lay out my, you know, Auto Tempest. I realized that I forgot that for the last one, but I wasn't going to mention it because I probably thought you wouldn't notice. Also, you know, it's a fine car. There's nothing I can say about it. It's a Prius. Priuses are always good purchases. They're great on gas mileage. They're great on safety. They're fantastic first cars. They've got excellent space in the back. This is good for all the reasons that I said the 2nd generation was good. They're just great cars, and they're especially fantastic first cars. The Toyota Yaris IA, this Scion IA, or the Toyota Yaris after 2020, is the last great Toyota because it's a Mazda. Let me explain. This car could be optioned with a manual. This car could be optioned with an automatic, not a CVT in automatic. This was Mazda's base car, and meanwhile, Toyota was chasing on CVTs and a bunch of other stupid crap. Mazda just kept the same formula and made one of the most reliable cars anybody will ever have. If you buy this car, you will be like that one dad who bought that 99 Toyota Camry for sale in 2005 and then still drives his kids to school in it today. This is the last truly reliable Toyota that will go on forever. And it's a rebadged Mazda 2. But you want to know, just forget that. It's a Toyota. You didn't even notice until I told you, unless you lived in Europe, as you know this is the Mazda 2. And if you live in Europe, buy a Mazda 2. All right, well, here's everything you need to know about it. Here's all the specs and everything. Well, not really the specs, but, you know, where to find it, the price range. Again, $11,000 for a 2020. You can't beat it. And, yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And, you know, I made this on my show, even when it should be a Quokka's Lot Walk, because that's where we look at cars, you know, top 10 lists and stuff. I made this my show because I really wanted to talk about this, because it seems like a lot of young people don't really know what to buy. You know, they saw their fathers and their grandfathers and their mothers and their grandmothers just buy cars that were reliable, you know, the Grand Caravans, the Town & Countries, and in some cases, literally, those don't exist anymore, so they don't really know what to buy for their first car. A lot of them end up buying Ford products, Mopar. They just really don't know what to do. And I think that this video is important, and I'm not going to make another video like this. I'm not going to do what every other channel out there does and milks the algorithm and makes 92,000 first car videos, because this was really meant to be the be-all, end-all. In fact, I am considering privating the other videos that I made of this, because I don't want to milk the topic and have 19 videos about it. This list is what I think you should buy. So with that, thank you and goodbye.